Okay, so back at the cabin now on a frisky Sunday. Some good amount of snow fell. So today I thought I'd do a little kind of different type of video. I get a lot of questions in the comments, about gear, about how I built the cabin, what's the size of the cabin, what I bring every time I come here, what's the location of the cabin, I get a bunch of comments. So today I thought I'd do a little walk around and tell you all about how it started pretty much and what was the point of building all this, how long it took. A lot of people ask me that. Did I get any help? I got quite a few subscribers recently, so I thought that I would pretty much go over how I built this little cabin in pretty much less than a year. So let's get started with that. Okay, so pretty much here's where it all started. I have a big tree right on top of me, and I would say 2-3 years ago, when we first got the property, I found this big tree. I'm like, yeah, well, it would be a good spot to build a little shelter. So I started, and I made myself a little debris shelter. I kept it, I think, for about a year, maybe a year and a half. But then I started drawing. I have a little sketchbook and such, and I was starting to draw plans of pretty much just little cabins or little more permanent shelters. This was like out of my reach pretty much. I didn't really know how to build a cabin or anything. But after drawing a bunch of plans, I had like a lean-to shelter that was bolted onto the tree, and I would build up the walls with logs, so kind of like a little half cabin. I had just a various amount of just different ideas and sketches that I was doing. Then after, I thought it would be a good idea to attempt to make a cabin, just because of the time it would take. I've cut logs like my support beams for the porch in the front. Those are some of my original logs that I have cut like 3 years ago, just because of the way that I thought I would bolt all the logs together. I thought it would have been a good idea, which it wasn't, so I switched up my plans. And all through I'm like sketching this, I'm thinking about this, I'm watching a whole bunch of different videos on how to do it, just for different inspirations, because everybody builds a cabin a different way. They might look the same, but they're all different. So another issue when I started, doing all this was, how are we going to carry the logs up here, or how am I going to carry the logs? So that was, a pretty big issue, because I know I'm in a very dense forest, but I had to find a way to, let's say, bring a log that's maybe 100 feet away and drag it all the way here. And I know that would take a lot of effort, a lot of time to do. So now that I have this up, I can pretty much tell you guys what it took and how long it took. As for the tree itself, it's an absolute monstrous tree. I knew that I wanted to build whatever I was building underneath this, just because there is a whole lot of, cabins and such you see in pictures or whatever that have the big tree over it that catch the snow. And I knew that even if the cabin wouldn't be super solid, or that my building technique wouldn't be super good, that most of this tree could capture, a good amount of snow, or whatever debris would be falling, because snow isn't the only hazard around here. Broken trees, like one just broke right behind the camera where you guys are, maybe 2 weeks ago. It was a good tree. It was a poplar, so it's a softwood, so it pretty much snapped off. And that looks like a 6 to 8 inch tree. So if that falls a cabin that's not very structurally sound, that an amateur built, like me, it could pretty much just break it. It weighs a few thousand pounds. The cabin, if it's not strong enough, could break. But like I said, I knew I wanted to build a cabin under this big tree. I don't know why, but I just thought it would have been a good idea at the time. So once I had all my plans sketched out and I knew what I wanted to build, I kind of just started chopping logs and just trying my best to drag him here as much as I could. We'll get into the tools and, you know, everything I use later. There's some handmade tools in there. I just pretty much was going along and going with the flow. So, also one thing I want to point out, my logs weren't peeled. I decided to do it. If you look at my earlier videos, I just decided to keep the bark on the logs. So, it looks a little bit different than my earlier videos. But yeah, once I started cutting down all the logs, I knew that, okay, well, I had to plan, you know, the floor plan. So the floor plan, I knew I wanted something small. My inspiration pretty much was a hunter-trapper cabin from like the mid-1800s that there's old pictures of, you know, kind of like a one-man build. So that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want anything big. I don't want a 2-story log cabin. I don't want like a $10 million cabin or anything. I just want a little simple off-grid tiny home that you could live out of. So I think I pretty much achieved that now. Okay, so when I started finally building, I had my floor plan all laid out. I came up with a 10 by 10 cabin. So I cut all the logs at 11 feet, just so I have a little bit of room to make the notches on each side. I started building, and I got up to about underneath the door hinge, so the first 3 logs, I would say. So I had right at that point, I had about 12 to 15 logs cut and stacked up myself. And I came to the conclusion that it would have taken quite a long time to just cut little like 4 to 6 inch logs and then just stack them up one by one. And also bigger logs, I still think they would be more structurally sound. So at this point, my dad came to help me, so that way we could have brought a whole lot bigger logs. So there's a reason, you know, if you guys look at older pictures of cabins that people built themselves, the logs are maybe from, I would say like max, like a really big log, like a ridgepole or something like that would be like 8 inches. And that's because everything had to be brought by hand. I have absolutely no machinery. I don't have a winch. I don't have a cable. I have nothing here. Okay, I only have pretty much what I could bring in my backpack. And in the winter, I have my sleigh that I could drag stuff with. So that's pretty much how I used to bring everything, just with my whatever could fit on my body, pretty much. So yeah, my dad started helping me. Everything was doable if you're alone, obviously. You know, thousands of people build cabins every year. It's just that I also wanted to get the roof on as fast as possible before the winter, and that goal just seemed like light years away. When you are like 3 logs high and then you're already thinking about the roof, it seems like forever, then you'll never get it accomplished. You just gotta have a little bit of faith there, and then just know that one day it'll get done. So right about at this point now, last year, I want to say, I have pictures and journals and everything that I recorded. November 19th, today we are the 29th. Last year I was putting up the roof and there was a lot of snow, so I was putting up the planks just so that I could have a clean interior. So at that point, it was snowing. I was putting up the planks on the roof, nailing them down. Then after that, I think a week after, I started putting up my black tar paper on the roof just to cut a little bit of water out. Then shortly after, maybe I want to say like a month, maybe past Christmas, so like late December, I started with the tin on the roof. So at that point, in December, I had my full cabin with a roof on it. But now the issue inside was that I had no floor. So for the floor, I started working pretty much when I had a roof, because I had lights and flashlights and such, just whichever type of light that I could bring. I had oil lanterns, anything, and I was putting planks down. I think I have a video of this. I'm not sure. I think it's like an old video. But yeah, I started pretty much just making the supports underneath, putting the planks in one by one that I bought. I didn't have a sawmill at the time, so yeah, I had to be as cost effective as possible. I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of money on this thing. I was just doing it for fun. So yeah, at that point I started building my floor, and then a few months later, after that, I started moving stuff in, mainly because there was snow on the ground and I had a small sleigh. So I decided to throw in my fireplace and drag it all the way here. I had to bring my chimney, pretty much anything I could bring, my bed, anything that would have been too heavy to bring in the summer. I just started hauling as fast as possible because I didn't want to be stuck or fall through the ice or anything. So I finally got my stove in here. When that happened, I was super happy because I could finally be a little bit warmer. Okay, so now we are in pretty much end of March. I finished the caulking. I barely have anything to do. At this point now, I have a living space. I could live in it. There's no wind blowing through it. So total time it took every weekend pretty much that I could come. It took 1 year from April to April. But now I will write it in the video when I edit it, the exact dates when I used to come and do 2 rows of caulking. I didn't have time. Okay, well, I don't know, April 1st, 2020, did 2 rows of caulking or whatever. I pretty much wrote everything down. Well, yeah, from April to April, it took me a year. Every weekend I had this whole thing built. With the help of my dad too, it kind of went a little bit quicker. But like I said, alone, just if you have the strength and stuff to pull the logs, it would have been the exact same time. Even better if you would have an ATV or like a horse to pull logs or whatever you want. Anything but manpower, because pretty much anything on Earth is stronger than us, so it helps. So yeah, had a full cabin built. Now at that point, I'll just show you guys my logs and such, what I did. Okay, so this is a pretty good example to get into the technical stuff. I did a dovetail style, so pretty much anything that could have been accomplished with a chainsaw. I didn't want to do any super complicated oval, or you have your compass and you trace the other log onto the other log. I didn't want none of that because, like I said, I was trying to beat the winter. So chainsaw, do a dovetail, fit it in. Next one, chainsaw, dovetail, fit it in. But doing that, it's not very precise. So as you can see, sometimes there's fatter gaps in between the logs. Not an issue, when you have caulking or whichever type of chinking you're using. So I had to fill in more gaps. But it did go, I think, I didn't do any other types of notches, but this little dovetail like this went a whole lot quicker, I find, and it's very, very simple. It's just a square, and it surely gets the job done. If I want, I could clean up the log ends, make it, round them off, make them look pretty, or do whatever. I don't really care, just because I like the rough look. But yeah, I think overall it's a good design. Okay, so what you're looking at here is underneath the log. I just saw this and I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about it. So it's a spike end that's sticking out. So this whole cabin is holding together with 10, 12-inch spikes, or 10-inch and 12-inch spikes. So it's not going anywhere. And after that, I was just screwing them in by hand, but they are lag bolts. So I have 12-inch lag bolts everywhere around this thing. So this thing it's absolutely built like a tank. It's not very wide. It's not very high. So it's very stumpy. So it's very, very just center of gravity super low. Even if a treetop or something would fall on it, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, nothing would happen. Hopefully that never happens, but I'm just hoping. So yeah, it's absolutely bolted down from every corner. If I would do it again, I would just use lag bolts just because it's a whole lot simpler just screwing them in. for that purpose, I bought myself an impact driver, a 1/2 inch impact driver, which was pretty pricey, but it just got the job done so much quicker instead of just screwing it in by hand. So, yeah, and also recommend lag bolts because they pull the logs together. So spikes, like with the sledgehammer, you beat them in from top down. Spikes, or I should say the lag bolts, you screw them in as much as possible from the bottom up because they will squeeze all the logs together. So even if you put, sorry, but if you put, let's say 2 or 3 on an 11-foot log like me, you could physically see the log prying onto the bottom one. So you could just put as much as you want and really just close in the gaps. So I really, really would recommend lag bolts. They are pretty expensive. I think it was for a box of 25 lag bolts, the 12-inch ones. It's around $50, so like $2 each. That's pretty expensive. I think it went to like 3 boxes, I think, or something. And then for spikes, it's around $70 for 50 pounds. So there's a lot of spikes in that box, but yeah. So I still have a box of full spikes that I didn't use. So now for the tools that people ask me about, what I used. It's pretty much as simple as it could get. I mainly, just to build this entire cabin, I used 3 tools, and one of those tools I don't have with me today because I just didn't need it. But it would be my little MS-170 Stihl chainsaw. I built this entire cabin. I was at 99%. I cut all the logs. I did the notches with it, so pretty much without it, it wouldn't have been impossible. And just that chainsaw, I bought it brand new. I think it was like $200, I think, for that little saw. So I use that saw. I don't have it with me today, but you could go see previous videos when we're cutting the window and such. That's what we use. The second most important thing is my axe. This axe, my mom gave it to me for Christmas 2 years ago, I think. Pretty much when I started building the cabin, I just wanted, I wanted a Hudson's Bay style, just because it's period correct. Hudson's Bay style axe. I like the whole fur trading, hunting, trapping, mountain man era. So I want a Hudson's Bay style axe. This is a little camp axe. It's perfect for me. I don't know how much maybe the head weighs like 1.5 pounds. The brand is Snow and Neely USA. It's not a perfect axe. I'll tell you guys right now. There was, I read up on them. There was issues with this company. It was USA made, then I think they sold to Chinese, and then a few years ago, I think an Amish family bought them or something like that. It's around those lines. Don't quote me on it, but like if you look at this axe, as I'm looking at it, the bit of it, so the cutting edge, it does a little wave just because I guess it was forged and they quenched it too quick or something like that. But it is. It's warped, pretty much is what I'm trying to say. You won't be able to see it, even on camera. If I try to make it focus, I already tried and you can't see it. But this axe has pretty much took the branches off of every single log in here. I didn't want to use my chainsaw because I had a very limited amount of gas to use. So I used that gas to cut down the tree and to cut my notches. Something you have to think about also, location of the cabin when you're building it. Like, for example, I use my location. It's off-grid. To get gas and stuff, it's probably 20 minutes to half an hour away to the nearest town, which is pretty much a village, because there's a little grocery store, general store, one little restaurant, and a gas station. So there's not much there. So what doesn't break, pretty much an axe. And it doesn't use any power, just good old, strength. So yeah, not a felling axe, not a huge axe, weighs nothing, it's nicely balanced. This axe was new, as I mentioned, around a year ago, 2 years ago, I don't know. It's all black now. This isn't dyed. This is sap. Now I have good grip on it and everything. I have been covered in sap from head to toe just building this thing. The axe is beat up, gives it character. I like it. What do I do with the sheath? For my next tool. This is a very primitive and very crude tool, but it is the most important tool of all. So this is a piece of a trunk, I think. I probably from one of these logs somewhere. I don't know. My dad and I, we put a rope on here. I think in one of my last or latest videos, I used it myself. We put a rope around here, a thick boat rope, so it's, it's a high grade, it won't break. And he would put himself on one side, I would put myself on one side, or I could even use it alone. So pretty much we're like this, one on each side, with a rope in between us, or alone. I put the rope in between my legs, and we just pull the logs. So pretty much, we were the machinery, we were the horses. So there is about a 12-inch log. The log right there, the closest to the tree, that was the last log for the wall that we put up on our cabin. It's about a solid 10 to 12, 13-inch log. So a log that diameter is very, very, very heavy. When it's green, it's 11 foot long log. It's extremely heavy, even for two people. I'm sure even if it would have had a machine like a winch or something, it would have struggled. So we, walked as much as we could. Pull, brake, pull, brake. Especially the terrain here. If you just go up this slope, it's downhill over that. This way is downhill, but pretty much behind the camera, behind you guys, it's just downhill, and that's pretty much where I wanted to cut all my logs because I wanted a little front yard type of thing. So I cut most of my logs there, but sadly that is downhill from the cabin, so you have to put all the logs uphill. So this is single-handedly the most important tool because it dragged all the logs that you see on this cabin all the way up to this point right here. So yeah, and apart from that, for the spikes, it was my orange sledgehammer that I still have in here, which I don't recommend. Again, it's a real pain when you have logs and you have to hammer them and stuff. It's just, don't recommend using spikes. Lag bolts are a whole lot better. And then at the end, maybe for like 10, 20 lag bolts, I had an impact. All the other ones were hand screwed in. So that's pretty much all the tools I use. My three main tools: chainsaw, axe, and a log with the rope. So that's all I used. It's getting frisky. But yeah, it's very simple tools. You don't need anything super expensive. Everything is doable by hand. It just takes a little bit more time. Alrighty, so now to finish off said video. I don't know if I covered every point, but if you guys have comments, just ask away. Or if you have questions, ask away in the comments. Would be a better way of saying it. But upcoming projects now, what I have on the floor is, it's like a makeshift birdhouse that I made. I'll just need to get like a screw or something and hang it up in the tree. And this window that I have here, I'm hoping on putting it somewhere on the wall where it's sitting right now, because I want a little bit more light on the cabin. I would also like, hopefully, if I could find one, a smaller window, maybe half the size of that one. The width of it is perfect. I think it's around 16 inches, 18 inches. But I think it's like 28 inches long, so it's a little bit too long. And I'm leaving not a lot of log room for the door hinges and just the notches. So I want my cabin to be structurally sound. So I'll go look for a smaller window. If not, that one's going to do the job. And if I do find a smaller window, I'll use that one possibly in the wood shop in the back that I'm supposed to do. Or in the tool shed, I should say. And for the final big project would be pretty much making the cabin longer for the woodshed. I'm going to need to find a way to bolt logs to my support beams that I have now. I might have to dig up the log, add some support beams under that one that's furthest away now from the camera. So pretty much in front of the tree. I'll need to maybe dig that one up a little bit, add support beams because I don't want it to touch the ground no more. I'll need to go underneath, bolt more. We'll bolt a longer log underneath, maybe another like 10-foot log, just so I have another maybe like 8 feet sticking out. And then I will start again, building up more logs, just so I could reattach it with this cabin. For a decent woodshed, I'll need to find more tin, more planks. I'll cut them myself now, so I have a sawmill. Yep, so having a cabin is pretty much a never-ending project, but it still goes, pretty well. You just have to take your time because you don't want to get burnt out of it. So yeah. And also, if everything goes well, one day if I want to like make this a permanent home or something, I could chink the logs, because I'm not going to chink the logs that I have now since it's going to be a woodshed. I want the wind to blow through so the wood could dry. But I could, when that's done, chink the logs, then put a door in if I want to from the inside. So cut my back wall now, make it a little door, and have a even bigger cabin. Let's say with like a bedroom in it or something. So hopefully one day I'll get there. Again, like I said, just gotta have faith because I'm very, very far off now. So I started cutting one log in my last video and I debarked it. But that's only one log of I don't know how many. Yeah, gotta stay positive. Comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.